Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Well, that is Matthew 17, verse 20, of course, and I am your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. I am here to encourage and walk with you as you parent your kiddos. I, too, am an adopted parent, mom of 8, 5 through adoption, including 2 young adult sons, both diagnosed when they were little with fetal alcohol syndrome, and somehow they are now 20 and 22 years old. So not sure how that happened, but don't blink because it does. Our boys are still at home, so we are still navigating life with them. And I understand the unique challenges involved with raising kids, not only with trauma, but also prenatally exposed to alcohol and other substances. So I'm still on this journey, and I am grateful to walk along with you. Today, we have a foster and adoptive dad as a guest with us. But before I introduce him, just a few things to share. First, thank you to everyone who signed up to win a free copy of my new devotional book, Soul Care Saturday, 52 Devotions for Foster and Adoptive Moms. Since I'm recording this episode before the end of January, we haven't yet picked our winners. But by the next episode, we will know who they are. If you are a winner, we will contact you directly by email. And then next episode, we will announce who the 2 winners are. So stay tuned to next week's show to find out about that. And if you are not a winner, and you are interested in a copy of my devotional book, you can find it on Amazon. Again, that's Soul Care Saturday, 52 Devotions for Foster and Adoptive Moms, by yours truly, Sandra Flach. Also, very important upcoming training that I don't want you to miss. Starting on February 19th, I will be leading my most in-depth training on FASD online. It is, I'm calling it Wired Differently. It's a deep dive into FASD using the facets neurobehavioral approach. That is the model that is based on the book Trying Differently Rather Than Harder. It is 5 consecutive Thursdays starting on the 19th of February. Each Thursday evening, it's a 3-hour session. It's 15 hours content. You will get a certificate of completion once you have we've completed the study, the course, which can help you with your continuing training hours. But really, it will be the best way to equip you for parenting kiddos, not only with FASD, especially with FASD, but also, maybe you're not sure if your kiddo has FASD, but they have probably ADHD, or maybe they have an autism diagnosis, or something's going on and you're not sure what it is. Whatever brain-based condition, right? And even if it's trauma, I don't always like to say it might be just trauma. Trauma is never a just, right? But our kids who come to us through foster care and adoption have all experienced some level of trauma and loss, which does affect brain development. And many of them have also experienced other things such as exposures to substances and whatnot. So if you have a kiddo with multiple diagnoses and you're just really struggling, this is a top-notch training for you to participate in. There is a link in the show notes, but you can get the details and register. That would be at our website, justicefororphansny.org/AFCJ. And I hope that you will do that because I would love to see you in that training. Be sure to also like and follow all of our adoption and foster care journey socials, our Facebook page and our Instagram page. Would love to connect with you there, as well as in person in some upcoming trainings that I have. Already just had a fabulous time at Filled, met some of you there. Love that. Can't believe that we've already, begun the season here of training and traveling and speaking. In February, I think it's February 21st, I will be in Birmingham, Alabama, at the Church of Brook Hills. Super excited to go there. And then March 21st, I will be at Mobilize, Ohio at North Canton Chapel. I'll be leading 3 breakout sessions there, I believe. And uh, nice, warm, sunny retreat, the Renew Retreat in Swansboro, North Carolina, near the ocean, April 30th to May 2nd. That is a retreat for foster and adoptive parents as well. So I hope that you will consider coming out to one of these wonderful conferences. If you are interested in having me come and speak to your group, lead an FASD training or a retreat you may have coming up for foster and adoptive parents, please contact me. My email address is in the show notes. I would love to come to your event, train, equip, encourage foster and adoptive parents in your community. So now to our guest. Derek Warren. Derek is a husband, father, and professional chef with over 20 years of experience in the kitchen. Alongside his wife, he and their family have walked the adoption and foster care journey, including parenting their son, Xander, who has been impacted by FASD. Out of both his professional background and lived family experience, Derek created Red Shoe Chefs, a father-son cooking project focused on practical kitchen skills, nutrition, and connection, especially for families navigating real-world challenges. Derek is passionate about using food, humor, and presence as tools for growth, healing, and relationship. Please welcome to the show, Red Shoe Chef, Derek Warren. Hey, Derek, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sandra, thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.
I am super excited because I got to meet you at CAFO last September, I think it was. You stopped by the table
It
and
was, yeah.
I was so excited to hear about what you're doing with Red Shoe Chefs. And I can't wait for our listeners to get to know you as well, because I know they're in for a treat. So thanks again for being here.
Of course.
Yeah. So I always love to start with a guest's adoption foster care story. So what led you and your wife to pursue foster care and adoption?
Well, how much time do you have?
As much as you got. Yeah.
It took us, well, the journey's been all over the place. But at the very start of it all, my wife and I have been married now for, goodness, I think we're going on 14 years this year. And we went through about 7 years of infertility. We're going to get deep really quick here because I have 0 shy bones in my body. It's a superpower of oversharing too. So, yeah, so my wife and I tried to start a family the traditional way. And for 7 years, we went through pretty aggressive infertility, unexplained. Doctors couldn't tell us why or why not. We went through different treatments, almost all the way up to IVF. We were right at that threshold, and we were hemorrhaging money. We were struggling together with why it was happening, why it wasn't happening, what we were supposed to be doing, and trying to listen to God's call through it all. My wife Erica, happened to be working as a nanny for a family that was going to our church at the time. One of their daughters was actually our flower girl in our wedding, and she herself was adopted, I believe, from Romania. So she was taking care of the kids then with this family, and they were adopting medically fragile children. And my wife kind of got to experience that. She got trained in respite as well. And throughout the process, we again didn't know what to do. We just kind of kept taking the next step and the next step and the next step through prayer and a lot of tears and a lot of questioning. And one thing led to another, where Erica felt led to say, you know what, if this isn't working, then maybe we look at maybe grabbing a foster care license. Seemed pretty easy at the time, of course, because we were really, really naive about the whole process. But we had talked about it when we first got married, about like potentially fostering after we started a family, had a couple of kids that were a little bit older and could understand everything. And after 7 years of failing at the whole thing, Erica really felt led to say, okay, you know what, this family's doing it. I feel like I'm supposed to be here, even though it's not like the most ideal job. I have to drive really, really far. They really can't afford to pay anything, but I really feel led to be here because this family is really awesome. The kids are awesome, and they're doing something that's well and above beyond what we've ever seen before. So we looked it up. There was a local foster care agency, Bethany Christian, in our area, that was offering classes that were going to start just a couple weeks after we looked at that. So we're like, okay, that's kind of perfect timing. And we started in on the classes, and the classes were really tough. We went through a lot to go through it. I think there was 40 hours of actual class time, so a couple of hours every Thursday night after work, doing the hard work and realizing that we didn't know what we were doing. We were overwhelmed. We were scared, and we saw some things that we didn't understand. And we almost quit. We went home in tears one night saying, man, that was really, really tough. That was really heavy. We don't know if we're cut out for this. Next day in church, our pastor was doing a sermon, and towards the end of it, it was about being content where you are, because if you can't be content where you are, you'll never be content where you will be eventually. But he said, if you feel like you're living a comfortable life, or if you're ready to take the next step of not necessarily obedience, but just openness to God's plan for your life, he said, pray quietly, just have your hands closed, say, God, disrupt my life, and then open them. And I said, well, besides this whole not having kids thing, I've got a really good job. I have a house, I have a car, I've got a wife, like everything else is pretty comfortable for me. I'm good. So what the heck, why not? And that's what I prayed. And then the next week we went back to our foster care classes. We felt very different in that class. We felt almost rejuvenated. And then that week, my wife at her job, helping this family, met a little boy. That little boy came into their house because Erica was certified for respite, and the little boy had to be respited because the family that was taking care of him at the time was getting ready to go on a vacation out of state, and the rules, I guess, read that he couldn't go with them, so he had to be taken care of in a certified respite environment, and that was the house that happened to be the certification. And then that family started talking, saying, hey, Erica and Derek are getting their foster care licensing. This little boy may need a home because the family that was his emergency placement needs to start making a decision. They had a family with high school age kids. They were going all over the place, tons of sports and stuff like that. And that family made a very, very incredible decision and a really hard look, and saying, we don't know if we're right for this little boy who has so many things that he needs. He came out of a really, really tough place, a really traumatic environment, and they got him through a ton of really, really tough spots. But they realized too that he might need more than what they were able to offer him beyond what they had already sacrificed for him. And the caseworker that was working with them said, a family like us doesn't exist. And once you make the decision on whether you're going to adopt or not, then you kind of are out of the picture. You don't get a choice. And that's when they looked at us and said, hey, you kind of fit the bill of everything that we've been praying about. They prayed very, very long and very hard about trying to find a family like us. And that was literally a week after I'd prayed that prayer, God disrupt our life. And that's how Xander came into our house. So we started taking Xander as a respite. And then we realized that this was very likely what God had in store for us. And after long prayer and long conversations, and again, lots of tears, we we made the decision that this was the way we were going to go, that we decided we were going to adopt Xander, and the family with their blessing that had been taking him couldn't have been more thrilled with how it all worked out. And yeah, here we are. 8 years later, we have Xander. And then, no joke, about a year later, after we adopted Xander, we had a daughter of our own as well. So
That's always how, not
we
always, but that happens, right?
yeah, we kind of laughed and almost scoffed at everybody that had said, "Hey, you know what? Like, as soon as you adopt, you guys are going to get pregnant, you're going to have kids. It's like nothing ever happened." And we're like, "Yeah, no, it's never going to happen. There's been so much to get here, and if it hasn't happened now, it's never going to happen." And yeah, now we've got a rainbow baby. Xander's got a sister, Paisley, and she's actually on our YouTube channel too, which we'll get to here, I'm sure, in a moment. But
Yeah, I've
that
seen
was
her.
yeah, that was the long and the short of it. Yeah, we went through a lot, but that was what led us there. Again, 7 years of infertility, and then just asking God to disrupt my life. And I haven't prayed that prayer since,
Yeah.
because it was a lot more than I had thought it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be a job change or something like that that God might have for me. But
Mm.
yeah, 8 years on, we've got Xander and Paisley now.
That is incredible. I love that story. And I know a lot of our listeners can, relate to the infertility journey, right? So I'm sure
Yeah.
that your story is resonating with so many of our listeners. And just curious, how old was Xander when he came to you guys?
So we met Xander, or actually Erica met Xander right around when he was 2.
Okay.
I
Little.
believe he'd been pulled out of home just a little bit before that. But he was an emergency placement right at 2 years old,
Mm.
into the foster family that we worked with, and again, who really got him through some of the toughest parts of his little life. So, and then once we started the process, because he was already awarded the state where we are, the way it worked, we were able to start taking him for overnights with our licensing that we had, the foster care licensing and the respite, for X number of nights and a total amount of hours. So we were maxing that out. And then once all of the paperwork and stuff went through and the decisions were made, we legally had to foster him for another 6 months before the judge would sign off on all the paperwork. Xander's actually part Native American as well. Even though you wouldn't know it by looking at him, he's very blue eye, blonde hair, very, very fair skin. But he's Native American, and we actually got to work with his tribe as well, which was a really incredible experience. And 6 months after they had all signed off on it, said this is really great, after they did their home studies and the judge said we've met the requirements, we actually unintentionally so were able to adopt him on National Adoption Day. And his tribal elder was there to officiate the ceremony of it all. And come to find out, the tribal elder himself had been adopted.
Wow.
So it was a really incredible, very kind of almost out of body experience. We look back at the video of some of that stuff too, and it was very overwhelming how it all came together.
Yeah, incredible story. And I love when God does that, because it's just you just see those God winks and
Yeah.
you're on the right track. So I love that. So what was the adjustment? So now you adopt Xander, he's in your home, he's your first placement really ever, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
you know,
First kid too. We went from not being parents to being parents to at the time he would have been 3. We were a parent to a 3-year-old. Yeah, the adjustment was like this.
yeah,
It was,
because he wasn't just a 3-year-old either. He's a 3-year-old that experienced trauma.
yes,
And that adds a level. And then I know we'll get to this, but also he has FASD, so that also I'm sure
correct.
factored in. So like when what was going on where you were like, okay, what's going on here?
So, truth be told, we still actually, again, 8 years on, are struggling ourselves with what is now he's a 10-year-old. He's a thriving 10-year-old, I might add. Um, but what is a neurotypical, if you will, behavior versus what is a attachment or difficult location or background behavior. Like you said, yes, he came from a very, very tough place. Without getting into too many details,
Right.
it was it was rough, and we actually only know about this much of it. We have a stack of papers from CPS who pulled him out that's about this big, and it's mostly hollow. They only know what they know, and there's a lot of we suspect based on all of the things that they had known prior. But when we went into those meetings, we were deer in the headlights. We had no idea what half of the terms were that they were using, half of the different things that doctors were saying. So the adjustment phase for us was very, very hard. When he was when we were all going through the process to adopt, we calculated out at one point in time that there were 23 different individuals involved in the process, between tribal workers, between his caseworkers, which we went through 3 in the period of time when we started the process to ending the process. They were overworked, and some of them were well burnt out, and rightfully so. They were taking on cases that were even more difficult than the one that we went through. Between them and the doctors and everything else too, we had a lot of people floating in and out of the house. So even attachment then was a weird thing. But the process after that, once we got him in home, was just trying to figure out how to be parents for the first time too, to not an infant, to a toddler who only spoke a couple of words. As a 3-year-old, he only, I believe, had 6 words in his vocabulary at the time, who also was suspected to have what doctors thought was gastroparesis. So they thought he had damage to his esophagus and the muscles above the stomach that told his stomach to either digest food or bring it back up. And because of the experiences that he had gone through too, he was an emotional vomiter. I know, not a pretty thing to talk about, but that was how he got the help he needed as an infant. And that came along with it too. So there was a lot of learning curves, a lot of nights where we didn't know what to do, and a lot of time where we were just trying to get by one step at a time. Thankfully, we had family really close. We had moved back we lived in Wisconsin for a year as I was out there for a chef job, but we moved back to try to start our family, and thankfully family lives within a 20-minute radius of us here. So we started building our community pretty quickly right there. But yeah, there were a lot of nights where we got into bed after we thought we had successfully got him down and just were so spent and looked at each other like, what just happened today? And then 20 minutes later, he was up again, and we're starting it all over again. So yeah, it was tough, but we knew, and my wife, more than I did at the time, knew we were doing the right thing. We knew we were in the place we needed to be, even though it felt very isolated, very alone, very confusing in a lot of cases. We knew we were right where we needed to be because we'd answered the call. And it was, and I'll be completely honest, that call was answered out of some form of self-serving sacrifice, because we wanted to start a family. So this is the way we were going to do it, and that was what we did. But then we realized too that as the days went on, and as the weeks went on, and as the months went on, as behaviors came and went and changed, it wasn't just Xander that God was rescuing through the story that he'd written for him, but also us too. My wife and I too, we realized that we had to do a lot of gut checks and say, you know what, we were parented this specific way, and this is how we were probably going to parent our kids as we go, because we turned out fine.
Yep.
And I don't know if there's a single way that I have tried the way that I was raised that has done the same thing for Xander. So almost all of those preconceived grand plans that we had, the plan A's of it all, were just thrown right away and had to be retooled. And it also is teaching us patience and joy in hard times, and watching Xander persevere through some struggles that he has with his FASD that are just like, as a 10-year-old, I wouldn't have been able to handle. So it's not just rescuing him, it's rescuing us too.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I can, testify too to the fact that my husband and I had three biological children when we stepped into this space of adoption and thought we knew, like, well, we are good parents. We know how to do this. We got this.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. And then it was like, oh, we don't really know anything because everything that we do know or we did know doesn't work, with these
Yeah.
kiddos. And it's a complete paradigm shift. So, and humbling, right? Because then you realize, I really don't know what I thought I knew. So, can totally relate to that. Before I get to the next question, I just want to let our listeners know if you're watching this on YouTube, um, Derek is sitting in his beautiful, I assume, warm kitchen because
It
he's
is
a
warm.
chef. And if you're looking at me, the pictures behind me are not one of those, AI generated backdrops. There's literally a blizzard going on outside my window behind me. So if you want to know what that looks like with the wind blowing and all of that, you can watch our YouTube channel for this. And hopefully the power will stay on and we won't have any problem with internet. So we prayed before we started. So we trust that the Lord is going to do that. So you mentioned, because Xander does have an FASD diagnosis. How did that come about?
So we knew that there was something different with Xander and Xander's story from the get-go. Whether we understood it or not, I can guarantee you we didn't understand it, because the different caseworkers, the CPS workers, everyone that had surrounded him on the foster care end of things had told us, like, hey, here's what we know. This is going to cause some things down the road. Now, that could be tomorrow, that could be when he's in his teens, well into his adulthood, wherever, but this is what we know. We also had recognized some things were different because of what we had been trained in, or trained on in our foster care classes. And a lot of the things that we'd seen in the foster care classes were so big and scary and over our heads. They were like, okay, that must be like an outlier kind of thing. They're just showing us the highs and the lows of it all, just so we're not too like deer in headlights situation. But when we started to recognize Xander was what we considered an emotional vomiter. If he got hurt, he would cry until he threw up. If he got told no because we have a dog and a cat, and if he was roughhousing with the dog too much, even though he was really, really tiny, he was about half the size he should have been when he got brought into our home. If he was roughhousing, we'd say, hey, nope, we're just going to set some healthy boundaries here, trying to learn where the no's and where the yeses are as parents. And it would turn into he would start throwing up. And then we started realizing, like, hey, he's doing this when he's like really, really keyed up or not getting what he wants. So kind of doing some detective work, which we'd been reading in some foster care like connection books, trying to connect with someone who is not from your home. That was something that wasn't just a damaged esophagus or something like that, like the doctors had suspected. We recognized that once we started to put some healthy boundaries in, that stuff started to change and go away a bit. So we pushed back on that assumption. But then we recognized, he would have been 3 at the time, the emotions that came with everything were so much bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It wasn't just a normal, like, oh, I got hurt. Ow, I'm going to cry. I'm going to seek mom and dad. I'm going to get that attention and love, and then I'm going to move on. It would last. And it would last for sometimes hours. It wasn't just a quick little, there was no consoling it. He had to burn it out. And we're like, okay, that's a bit different. And then when we started digging into some of the paperwork that we did have from the disclosure, we recognized, okay, these things are starting to, like, the math is starting to add up. So we very quickly, I'd say within the year after we tried to get a couple of months under our belt of just like trying to bond, after that, we sought outside help. We sought therapists, we sought doctors, we didn't seek psychiatry at the time because we didn't figure he was old enough for any of that. But very quickly on, we started getting professionals involved, and after many different individuals, we found one that had specialized in FASD because we had suspected it, but we didn't know how to get someone to say yes or no. And that's when this gal said he's what we call a diagnosis collector, or an alphabet soup collector.
Yep.
He will present as oppositional defiance. He'll present as radical attachment disorder. He'll present as autistic. He'll present as ADHD. He'll present as insert any 3-letter acronym here.
Mm-hmm.
But over top of that, it's the alcohol brain damage that is running all of it.
Yep.
And that's where we had a very big gut check moment. Like, what does this mean? Because in my naivety, I thought that, we can just use neuroplasticity and we can just work through it, rewire some stuff, and kind of ignore the damage.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be just a year worth of work and we're good. Figure out a plan, attack the plan, solve the problem. And my very patient wife was like, that's not how this is going to work. We're in for a long haul. So we picked up books, we picked up seminars, we picked up everything we could for what little bit of time we could handle that much heavy. And that's when we realized, okay, the FASD is really the thing here. And then soon after, it was time to start getting him into school. And that's when we really dug down into it, because we knew that we needed to get an IEP for him. So that way the schools could not only understand what we were trying to say, because we don't always communicate the best with that kind of stuff, but also just to help get him the tools that he needed, because the term that we've been told many times back to us is we're going to teach him how to cope. And that word cope for me doesn't really sit well, because I don't want him just to cope with all of these things. I want him to succeed. Yeah. And sometimes he's going to have to stick through it. But to back it up, yes, we had a number of professionals say the FAS is definitely where he presents. Now, he doesn't present nearly as heavy on some of the physical signs of it. So that was a little bit more tricky to figure out. They're facial structure and all that kind of stuff, based on our research, is relatively normal, but it's the behavior and then the dissymmetry of age. We recognized even though he was physically, say, 5 at the time, he was acting like his 2-year-old nephew.
Yeah.
With emotional regulation and all that kind of stuff. So the long and the short of it is we sought outside help very quickly, and were confirmed with that.
And that was great. You were able to get a diagnosis, because so many families struggle depending on what state you're in, so many things. And a lot of times the doctors require not only the facial features, and you're saying he didn't really have that.
So I will clarify, the FAS is what doctors have said is highly considered, I think is the word they used, or highly suspected. But because of the way that the full disclosure worked through CPS, they said that we cannot legally give you the full diagnosis that you could use on an IEP or in a clinical setting, because we don't have the facial features and the other set of data. But we have at least 3 professionals, not only from CAFO, but from our local area, that have said, this is what you guys have. And based on all available data, we had him tested for autism. We had him tested for a number of other things. He has clinical ADHD, but we've gotten him an IEP, so an individual education plan, under what they classify as an OHI, or other health impairments.
Yes. And that's common because, at the federal level, and that's starting to change with the passing of the FASD Respect Act, but FASD isn't recognized as a disability that would be classified on an IEP. So my boys as well had other health impaired. So
Yeah.
I think there might be 4 or 5 states that do have FASD as a diagnosis that would be classified, like that would be on an IEP, but most states do the other health impaired. Very, very common. So I'm thrilled that you were able to, to seek that help and people listened, right? And you were,
So are we. Yeah,
yeah,
we hear so many other people in the foster care and adoption sphere, the very small portion of it that we inhabit in our area that we're trying to continue to grow. But we hear so many stories of people who are seeking help for their littles that don't even have to deal with the FAS. They have all sorts of other things that they're working with to try to get that individual help in a very large school system, and no one listens to them. It's a very, very hard to hear story. And yeah, again, I don't know whether it was just this was God's plan, it was going to happen, or whether it was just the continued and sometimes aggressive pursuit to get Xander the help that he needed, and we weren't going to take no for an answer, because we knew that if he wasn't going to get that, if we didn't keep advocating for him, and I'm not saying that others don't, but we took a stance that we're going to do this come whatever may. And it took a lot of resources, it took a lot of time, it took a lot of, we were the squeakiest wheel. Like, I know we rubbed people the wrong way because we were annoying. We just kept going, we kept at it, and it cost us a lot of time, it cost us a lot of blood and treasure, it cost us a lot of resources. But I think we went through something like 5 or 6 therapists before we finally found one that
Mhm.
actually was like, hey, this is probably what's going on here, and here's how we're going to work to get this IEP for you. Because once you have one, that's the hardest part, apparently, is getting it. And once you have it, then things start to open up for you. So we went after it hand and fist
Yeah.
to get it.
That's so important. Now you mentioned too, Derek, and we see this, it's parenting is completely different, right? Especially when there's FASD involved. So what are some of the ways that you've learned to support Xander?
Oh, that is an ongoing process.
Yes, it is. It changes all the time, right?
Um, I think the biggest thing for us, we recognized very, very quickly on, but have to keep reminding ourselves too, because we kind of forget sometimes, because I mean, he's our son. Like, we do not really see him as anything other than that. I mean, we talk about adopting him quite often because it's such a big part of his story, and it's super important because that's like the 6 degrees of separation. We've found that um, almost everyone we talk to has some form of that in their family's story, whether it's them themselves or a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or maybe a sister or brother has some form of that in their story. So it touches a lot more families than I ever had realized. But with all of that said, the saying that I had picked up in a couple of different books was that once you know one child with FASD, you know one child with FASD.
Right.
It's not well, they've got ADHD and everybody that has ADHD just kind of acts the same. It was, no, Xander has an invisible disability, which I have to remind myself of quite often, on top of he came not only with that, but he came from a very difficult place, that trauma background, and that those things present sometimes radically
Well,
different.
yeah.
And I have had to take a step back, and it's something I'm still working on. I'm in therapy myself, for this, full disclosure, to work on meeting Xander where he is each day, even if we got over something yesterday. For instance, just tying his shoes.
Mhm.
Xander knows how to tie his shoes. He's actually quite good at it when he focuses, which that's a totally different conversation. But yesterday he got his shoes on just fine. And then today we had a meltdown.
Mhm.
And then tomorrow he could probably get them on just fine. And then the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and then one day it's another meltdown.
Yeah.
So meeting him in those moments, the best thing that we found with helping Xander is a lot of reminders. Some of our therapists have told us that what I and my wife would learn in just a couple of tries and couple of reminders, it's likely going to take Xander hundreds, if not maybe thousands
Yeah.
of reminders. And that for us is still a very large pill to swallow,
Yeah.
because we'll tell him to stop doing something. He'll say, okay, he'll do it. And then 5 minutes later, we're doing it again. So I'm trying to maintain patience and recognizing too that my emotions and my volume of emotions will very quickly be met the same and more by Xander's emotions as well. I have to remind myself that even though again he's my 10-year-old son, some days he is actually my 5-year-old son,
Hmm.
which his sister is actually 5. So I've got two 5-year-olds all of a sudden, emotionally speaking.
Yeah.
Um, some of the other supports that we found are most helpful is honestly sitting around a dinner table. Something that I grew up with. Thankfully, I was very, very blessed. I know it's not something that every family can do, or that every family has the blessing of time sat around a table together. But just being present as much as I can, but also creating routine.
Mm.
Xander struggles with anxiety, a very, very large amount of anxiety of
Yeah.
what's going to happen next.
Absolutely. So common with our kids.
Yeah, and it we notice it in our daughter, who does not have FAS. She's our biological daughter. She's been in the environment with us, so she's got the secondary kind of relationship with Xander's story. Um, but the what's going to happen next, even though today's the same day as it was yesterday, we have worked very, very hard and continue to push forward with routine,
Hmm.
even though we want to have the free range and just the flexibility and the fluidity of, we're just going to go here and do this and do that and all that kind of stuff. From the moment that he wakes up to the moment he goes to bed, whether he's at school or whether he's at home on a weekend or for a break, or like today, it's a snow day, rightfully so. Um, the routine we try to keep as close to the same as possible. So gets up, gets medication, gets breakfast, gets a bath, gets himself ready for school, goes to school, comes home, and it's the same thing at home. Once we get home, we're doing these things. So you never have to ask, you never have to worry, even though he asks and he
Yep.
still worries. Um, we're building it so that way it's home is safe.
Yeah.
Home, you don't have to worry, even though things change. Um, and you're going to worry and you're going to ask, our answers are going to be the same. And then finally, I think consistency. That's the one my wife really, really like works on and emulates the best. It's consistent. So if we have set up a boundary, and this is the yes and the no of the boundary, consistently, no matter how many times he tries to figure out the boundary, our response is still the same.
Yeah.
We don't always get it right. We mess up often as we're learning this process. And again, as a 10-year-old, we're going through a growth spurt, which is working out or coming out as we need to retool some medication a little bit, but also hormonal changes and everything like that. Through this CAFO conference now that we've been going to for, I think, 5 years, we've met some families that have multiple FAS children, such as yourself too, that have said, hey, we thought we had it figured out. And then they turned 13.
Yeah. Yes.
And then it was like we didn't do anything and we had to start all over again, but
Yeah.
with bigger emotions. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh no, don't tell me
Yeah.
that.
The fun part of the journey.
Yeah. So knowing we're really looking at this as the long game. This isn't
Yeah.
just
Oh,
let's get through today, even though there are so many days that are just getting through today. He alive? Is he healthy? Is he eating? Is he in bed safely? Okay, today was successful, even though it kind of stank. But the long haul, the
yes.
long view, which was CAFO's
Theme a few years ago.
just
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, you need to sit in it and say, okay, what we do today is going to hopefully lay the groundwork and the base tools that he needs for 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So we don't want to let off the pedal here with what we're doing, even though he's 10.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you're right. It's a long game, and it does, I don't want to scare you, but it does, I found, and it's the common, in this community, the teenage years, and part of it is that, the hormones, it tends to get harder. And my youngest two are now 20 and 22. And what you start noticing is during that time, during the teenage years, and as they get a little older, the gap widens between where they are and where their neurotypical peers are. So when the
Yeah.
neurotypical peers are in high school and they're planning for college and they're getting part-time jobs and they're getting their driver's license and they're going out on dates and they're doing all these things, a lot of times our kids with FASD, they might be the same age as their peers, but
Mhm.
they're really not developmentally there, right? They're not, and it wouldn't be safe for them to be out there doing those
Yeah.
things. And not only does that become more challenging for the parents, but also our kids begin to recognize that there's a difference between, what they're doing and what their peers are doing. And there's grief there and there's loss
Yeah.
there, and that can be very hard. And then, and like you said earlier, you meet one kid with FASD, you've met one kid, right? Some
Mhm.
kids with FASD do go on to college. Some of them do, are able to have a full-time job or get married, drive a car, that kind of thing. And then there's kids that, some of those things probably aren't going to happen, or at least
Yeah.
not for many years beyond what their neurotypical peers were doing them at. So it is a long game. But they can still, God has gifted them with wonderful skills and abilities and talents, right? And strengths, and we need to build on those. Um,
Yeah,
couple
if
of,
you,
yeah.
I would love to speak to that too. I wanted to make sure that I remember sitting in a chair in my foster care classes being told about all of the bad that may come because of the stories that the teachers had in their own lives with the foster care that they were doing and the adoptions that they were doing. And I remember being really, really scared about that and thinking, okay, never in my house. It's not going to work that way. But
Yeah.
also, what if it does? What if everything that I thought was going to be just really like the quintessential Norman Rockwell family type thing? Because I grew up in a what I would consider a normal Midwest household, and I have like I am who I am because of the way that I was raised and the way that I grew up, and I loved my childhood and I love my parents and all of that. But I don't want to sit here now and perpetuate what happened then too about how much work I have to do and we have to do with Xander and how much we've gone through to get there. Xander is a really incredible young 10-year-old, and he has so many superpowers as a 10-year-old that I never did. And in this case, sometimes I still don't have. That little boy started with 6 words in his vocabulary when we met him now 8 years ago. And that kid is now testing in the 90th percentile for cognition on
Wow,
words.
that is great.
He talks so much. He's actually, you can't hear him right now. He's down for a nap because he had a snow day and he's been going like crazy. He's still talking in his bedroom right now. However, he is, he, although he has a lot of emotional baggage and a lot of times where it's some really dark days and some really big, scary emotions, the kid is so loving and caring and empathetic. When someone else around him gets hurt, he's the first one to be there. We turned the sometimes over amount of talking that he does into what we call his superpower now, because he also doesn't have boundaries. That kind of came with the FASD, but also the attachment end of it through the foster care journey of just that revolving door of people. The boundaries are kind of broken, so we turned that into now once a month we do door greeter duty at our church, and that kid lights up everybody coming into church. And we stood out in the cold for 45 minutes just a couple of weeks ago, and not a single person walked into that church without getting a high five and a smile.
Mm.
He is so good at art. I love art. I was going to do art instead of cooking. But he is so good at it and crafting, and he is very engineering minded. He doesn't focus for very long on pretty much anything, but when he's got something mechanical in front of him,
Yes.
he will sit there for hours on the floor, which make my knees hurt. But he'll sit there with Legos, he'll sit there with building. He wants to do robotics eventually, and the amount of things that he wants to do with his life are every couple of days. He's like, Dad, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to grow up and do this. And he was just talking about being a fireman the other day,
Yeah.
being a policeman, and being an engineer, and being a scientist. And like, he's got huge goals, he's got huge aspirations. And although math and handwriting are a real struggle for him in school, that kid could have the worst day at school, and we've had some tough ones, and he can come out of that school just skipping to me in the pickup line and say, Dad, today was awesome. And his teacher's in the background saying, no, it wasn't awesome. But then it's like he almost just, either he lets it go or he forgets about it. And the next day, that kid is so excited to get to school. He's like, I want to go see my friends. I want to go back into school. Today's gym. We're doing this thing in gym. And then tomorrow's art. I'm doing that thing in art. And I'm doing this thing in Spanish. And it's so, in those moments where it's the toughest for us as being his parents with how things go, those moments are ones that we try our hardest to hold on to as well. That
Yeah.
he's got so many good things going for him and so many amazing qualities. And again, things that he's doing in school, I never did.
Yeah.
So
I love that. And he reminds me of my 22-year-old son with FAS because he was very small when we adopted him at age 3 and he had severe scoliosis. So he had all
mm,
these problems and surgeries and things. And, he was always this little guy with a huge personality and he wanted to be a police officer. He wanted to be a firefighter. And I used to think to myself, oh, this poor kid is never going to be able to be those things,
yeah,
not only because of the FAS, but because of the his small stature and his physical limitations. But he too was the Lego maniac and loved all of those things and loved building things. And he learned how to weld. So
wow,
he works in that field. He can do small engine repair. He's a welder. He does all of that. But he's also a volunteer firefighter for our local fire department. And
no kidding.
though he can't wear the respirator and the big heavy pack
Hmm.
and go into structures to fight fires, he is certified to do external firefighting. And then he's
Wow,
also like he's now the sergeant of arms of the fire department, it's a volunteer fire department, and is in all of the parades and goes to
oh,
every call. And that's become another family for him. And they understand he has a brain-based disability. They understand he needs some supports and things like that. And he can drive. He's got the ability to drive, so he can drive. He drives himself to work. He drives himself to the firehouse. He goes to all the meetings. And it really has just been such a huge blessing that he gets to do those things.
that sense
Um,
of purpose, I'm sure,
yeah.
is amazing for
Oh,
him.
very, very much so. So yeah, our kids can do all kinds of things. There's things that there's lots of challenges, but they also, there's hope because there's lots of things that they are able to do. We just have to, I call it mining for gold, right? Look for those
Sure.
strengths and build on them, because they are going to be able to do those things. And his academically, he graduated with a certificate because, he did not get a general education diploma. His reading level, his math, everything was on the very low end. But he completed that program and he's still
Mm,
able to do these things. And he needs supports with things, managing money and, certain decisions and things. And we're here, it's the long haul.
mm,
He's 22 and he still lives home. He will be moving into a little apartment attached to our garage here soon. So he's like right next to us. So he'll have that,
sure.
little bit of feeling of
Independent.
independence, but yet we're right there and he can get that support. So just like being creative and
Yeah.
looking for those things because there's so many things our kids can do and they just need that support and that understanding, right? Their brain works differently. They're going to need help in certain ways. But there's still so many ways that they can be a blessing and they can give back and they can learn and do so much.
That's such a great point to something that I didn't realize too much until even having this conversation is not limiting their story based on our either fears or our trepidations or maybe our inability to see beyond the next couple of steps. That's something that we're recognizing with Xander, the way that he interprets the world and the way he sees it too. He's what do they call it? A 60-second kid in a 30-second world.
Oh yeah.
Where
Typical
we
for
where we
FASD.
where we talk really fast and we get a lot of information across really quickly because we're used to it, and he only processes every couple of words, and then he repeats back to me what I said, but it never really sunk. Or he'll repeat something back that honestly sometimes is hilarious because it wasn't what we said. But trying to meet him where he is in the way that he learns the best, sometimes it's physically, like trying to give him multiple instructions verbally doesn't work. But yeah, not limiting his story because I'm afraid I'm afraid if he was ever to drive. But yeah, hearing your son becoming that fireman that we thought maybe he wouldn't be able to, and now he's part of a brotherhood of guys that he can look up to that's really positive and really encouraging for me even now, because I want that for Xander. I want that for everybody like that. Like just because you're differently able doesn't mean you can't do it. And that's
right.
honestly something we tell Xander. Just because your story is tough and your brain is different, it honestly just means you have to work a little bit harder, a little bit differently. And sometimes it's a lot and sometimes it's not so much.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphans.ny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphans.ny.org/hope-community.
So, Derek, I wanted to, you and I were talking about Dr. Jared Brown in the episodes that we wrapped up that 4-part series on nutrition. One of the things that Dr. Brown had mentioned was how cooking together or taking a cooking course as a family can really build, not only the understanding of healthy nutrition with our kids, but connection, right, for families. So that made me think of you because I know what you're doing on YouTube with your Red Shoe Chefs channel. So tell us about Red Shoe Chefs. What is it? What are you doing? What's your vision?
So my most deeply held, most cherished, and fondest memories of growing up in a home where my mom did a lot of the cooking, but my grandma also lived in the same house, 2-story farmhouse, had her own home upstairs. Those 2 women were always cooking. My mom is actually behind me right there, and she's in every episode that we do. And she gave me the love for cooking. I watched her cook all the time. I watched her and my grandma take care of their family in the best way that they knew how. And it was the most important way. And like I talked about earlier, eating around a dinner table, we grew up, my dad was a school teacher, so he was home for dinner every night and the weekends, summertime. I grew up on a farm. So it kind of fell together. Those memories are things that I just remember holding so deeply. Learning to cook from my mom, going to culinary school because of it, I realized that, I can do what I love and get paid for it. Sometimes it just kind of clicked, like I want to be able to teach eventually, my dad being a teacher, I love what I do, and I want other people to be able to do it too. I've been cooking professionally for 20 years and found very few opportunities to do that other than training people with me in the kitchen just to take over my roles and station as I was moving on to a different restaurant, or trying to help friends just get a little bit better because I'm a nerd and I love to read and watch what other chefs are doing and all those sorts of things. And I'm excited to share what someone else taught me because it's exciting. So fast forward after 20 years of doing the professional kitchen stuff, from restaurants to then being a private chef for the last decade, I realized I still hadn't really scratched that itch to teach. And then it kind of, I went into church one day, and they were talking about, my pastor was talking about being a role model. And at the same time, it was starting to click to me because we had just come home from our fourth or fifth CAFO conference, that there's more to life than just kind of going through the motions. And again, we were going through the motions. Some days we still are, of we get up, the routine's the same, these behaviors are happening, this is really tough, and go to bed tired and just do it all over again and all over again. But I was blessed with a job that gave me the ability to take my son to school and then pick him up too. And I noticed that there was a bridge of time that I just was kind of checking out on my phone. I was tired, exhausted, stressed out, any number of things with what was going on. And I started to recognize, okay, that's not a really good role model. That my son and daughter are seeing me just nose in phone when I come home, because I have no energy to do anything beyond just kind of check out. And it kind of sunk there. Coupling it all together, I prayed that day that I would become a better role model, or God would give me a chance to kind of make up for the areas where I thought I was failing, thought that I wasn't being a good dad, wasn't connecting with my son. And moreover, especially with Xander, the connection is the hardest thing because of where he's come from and all of the trust that has to come with what we do as a family. That part of his story is still very, very, I don't want to say broken, but very difficult. He wanted to do sports, but like we were just talking about with your kiddo, sports are physical, and Xander being much smaller for his age and very averse to touch. We didn't think that sports were going to be necessarily what he wanted to do, on top of then having to then sacrifice more nights and weekends to go take him to the sporting events, to then watch him either not want to do it or have a really tough time or potentially get hurt pretty badly. So in that service, that's when I prayed about becoming a better role model, and the Holy Spirit spoke to me. This idea, it was not mine. It was given to me when I went again with open hands, not asking to have my life disrupted per se, but again, what do I do with this? Because I feel like I'm failing. I do not feel like I'm meeting the calling that I'm supposed to as a dad and as a follower. And that's when it hit, like, go teach your kid to cook. And I said, okay, that makes sense, because I loved cooking with my mom. Great memories. That's how we're going to bond. And then Xander had spoken to me about starting a YouTube channel a couple of months prior to that. But I was like, no way, dude, are we doing that? Because you and computers scares me. Yeah. No way am I going to let you just go onto YouTube and create some Minecraft or Lego thing by yourself. That's really, really scary. But it clicked right there. Teach your kid to do it. Create a YouTube channel, but not for yourself, but for him and for your daughter, and eventually the rest of your nieces and nephews. So that way, if and when something were to ever happen and Xander has an opportunity to look back, he has proof that mom and dad were there. Mom and dad showed up. Mom and dad took time, even though we didn't get on the floor and play Legos as much as you wanted to, or we didn't want to go outside and kick a ball around as much as maybe you wanted to. Mom and dad were there. Your family was there, and you can look back at that. You also will then walk away from this for as long as we do it. Who knows how long? You'll walk away with a skill that lots of people don't have. It's something that I think is a great disservice to not have a home ec style course in schools to teach kids how to simply prepare a couple of staple foods for themselves that aren't just highly processed, ready to eat meals. Don't get me wrong, I use those sometimes too. You can see it in our channel as we get further into the conversation. But I want both of my kids to walk away from my house knowing how to cook and take care of themselves. And then as I opened up my hands and said, okay, God, if this is what you really want me to do, I'm going to go talk to my wife now about this. And I'm a hype man and I'm an idea man. And I've come to my wife with a number of ideas that are like, let's do this and let's do that. And we're going to get crazy and we're going to go do this thing. And we're going to start a business over here. And she just looks at me and she says, no way, that doesn't sound right. Nope, that kind of sounds stupid. You're being dumb. And rightfully so. I get in my own head sometimes. But this one, she immediately said, that's a fantastic idea.
Aww.
And that was that test that I kind of set up for myself. If she says yes to this, then that definitely means it wasn't just me getting hyped up in my own head in church because I had a really good sermon and I wanted to go do something crazy. And then I went to my in-laws too, whom are the reason why I actually came to Christ. I was an atheist before I met my wife, and all that story, they with my wife brought me to Christ. So I went to them for guidance on it too. I said, this is what I want to do with Xander, and you guys know Xander. You guys know his story. You guys have been pivotal in helping us. Is this a good idea? And both of them, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, were like, when do we start?
Aw.
I'm like, okay, this is real. Let's figure this out. And we took a couple of months and researched and we started filming in this kitchen here. And it's again, it truly came out of a way to bond, to teach, and to hopefully bring the ability to learn how to cook and take care of yourself and your family better, level up in the kitchen. Our saying that we go by is everyone can cook and we'll show you how. It's not just if you know what you're doing. It's you can come in to our channel, and whether you're a professional chef or just learning to cook, or you're a mom that's homeschooling and wants to do stuff, or like we just heard on the podcast a couple of episodes ago, I didn't know how many people may actually be looking to take cooking lessons with their kids who have FAS or autism as a way to not only bond together, but also to create healthy eating habits. We know that food makes a big difference in our kids' lives. Like I had said earlier, the gastroparesis was causing Xander to throw up. That doctor that had diagnosed him with that looked at us in the eyes and said, you're going to very likely have to puree all of his food for the rest of his life. He may never eat solid food. And my wife and I looked at each other and we said, there is no way that God just blessed two chefs, because I met my wife in culinary school.
Oh, wow.
There's no way that God just blessed two chefs with a kid who'll never be able to eat solid food. That's gotta be a joke. And one thing led to another. After he was being curious about food, we started introducing that to him and he started eating solid food. And we reversed the diagnosis, the gastroparesis. Turns out it was emotional things and some of the brain damage that comes with the FAS. But the fact is that kid now eats something a lot of times, full disclosure, healthier than I do. He loves food. He loves food. And he eats so many amazing things, not just because I'm a chef, but because he's curious about it too. What does that taste like? What if we put these things together? What is that over there? And then that's what we do now. Together, we are trying to show that everyone can cook, because if I can teach Xander to cook and Xander can teach you to cook, we all win. Yeah. And we're bringing light to God's kingdom through it all too, because again, we're blessed with this ability. Again, I've worked incredibly hard over the last 20 years to hone the skills that I have now, and I'm continuing every single day to work on practicing more. I mean, the industry shows you that once you think you know a lot, you only know this much, because it's constantly evolving and there's more to learn. So we wanted to bring that to other people, because I want to take care of myself and my family better, and we want to help others do the same thing. So helping individuals that might be less off. Or I remember going through it where we had some of the food stamps and EBT stuff, the WIC stuff that came along with Xander when we were fostering him, and recognizing how difficult it is to cook healthy on a lot of that stuff. We want to help not only just train, but help open up a world of, okay, if this is what I've been given today, it's maybe not much. Here's how I can make it better. Here's how I can make it taste better. Here's how I can make it healthier. Here's how I can stretch it for more days.
Yeah.
And also staying safe in the kitchen too. That's something that we really take into consideration with Xander, because his fine motor skills are behind because of the FAS. I've got a set of plastic knives for him here, so he can feel like he's part of the kitchen.
Yeah.
These are safe. You can't cut yourself. We researched it out, and I want people to see, you know what, just because I'm different, and just because things in my body don't work the same way, or just because I have to do it a little bit different way, I can still do it, and I can do it well. So all that came into being with Red Shoe Chefs. And like you have mentioned many times before, the symbol for the FAS community is the red Converse. I'm actually wearing them under the table. I think it would probably be rude if I put my foot up, but
Okay.
there are some episodes on YouTube where I have. No shame there.
I saw them at CAFO because I think you wore them at CAFO.
Yes, I wore them every day, and it fit the mission, because it's not for me. There's so many people out there on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok that are just doing it just to get themselves out there, get their fame, get their money, and that couldn't be further from why I'm doing this. It is literally just recording us having fun as much as we can in the kitchen, being silly, but then also in the midst of it all, helping teach my son and my daughter Paisley and my nieces and nephews and friends and family, here's how we can do it better. Here's how you can take care of yourself better. Here's how you can, again, make things stretch out longer. Here's how you can save money. That's a big one for us too, saving money on a lot of stuff. So that's the long and the short of it.
Yeah, and I love it, and I love that because I've watched, I watched the other night I watched the you made tomato soup with the ingredients in your pantry,
Yes.
right? That was a great one. I love that.
Yeah.
Caramelized onions because I'm like, ooh, I love those. How do we make those? So I love what you're
Awesome.
doing, and I love the fact that really, anybody can prop up a iPad or whatever in the kitchen, get your YouTube channel on, get your kids in the kitchen and cook together and learn together. And you're learning a skill, right? Everybody needs to
Yeah.
learn that skill to cook, but you're also connecting with your kids, right? And it's fun and you're learning about nutrition. So I just think it's a brilliant, and I love that you're doing that. Derek, where can our listeners find Red Shoe Chefs? What's your channel?
So primarily we're on YouTube. So you can find us at Red Shoe Chefs on YouTube. So YouTube/at Red Shoe Chefs. If you just type in Red Shoe Chefs, we will appear somewhere within the first couple of search queries there. We do have a Facebook and an Instagram that we update as well, but that is mainly just we've got the name there, and it kind of shows you weekly what we're up to on YouTube, and then we link it so that way you can jump right over to YouTube there. We don't have TikTok or anything like that at the moment, and I think it's going to stay that way for a while. But we release a new episode, which is considered a long form episode, anywhere between 8 and 20 minutes long, every Saturday about 9 o'clock Eastern time. We've been attempting to release a short form vertical video roughly about once a week as well, as long as life doesn't get too crazy here. But yeah, YouTube is our primary home for the long haul here, and that allows us to be able to interact with our viewers, with anyone who stops by, drops a comment. I'm up at 5 in the morning checking in on all of that. That's typically when I spend the time actually editing everything kind of quietly, hopefully, with a cup of coffee. But we're in the comments there as well, talking with anybody. So we met people at CAFO and we went around asking them, if you could learn to cook one new thing, what would you cook? We take our audience and our subscribers to heart. We love seeing others joining us there and jumping in, and there's no question that we're gonna turn away. We love it all, and we want to talk to more people and get feedback too. If you happen to drop in there, if there's something that we can be doing better, we are open ears, because I am literally, the iPhone that I'm speaking to you on right now is what we record on. I work off of free editing software, and it's not fancy here. The fanciest thing is honestly the kitchen behind me, and it does the trick. So
Yeah. Love it. Love it. So it is on YouTube at Red Shoe Chefs. Um,
correct.
I encourage everybody to go check it out, and check it out with your kids, because get in the kitchen and get cooking would be so much fun, and build that connection and build those skills. So Derek, you chose the verse that I opened with, which was from Matthew 17:20, about the mustard seed.
Yes.
If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, right? So what does that verse mean to you?
So obviously it connects with me because it is talking about an ingredient that I actually use in the kitchen. But it was one that stuck out to me over the last, again, like I said, I did not necessarily grow up a full, firm faith believer. And when I entered my college years, I went to agnostic and very, very briefly an atheist before I met my wife. So when that verse stuck out to me, it rung something in me that said, okay, in a mustard seed is one of the smallest things that I work with in a kitchen. That seed truly is very, very, very tiny. And if that seed gets added into a dish, mustard is one of the more powerful flavors that you're going to encounter. Put it on a hot dog and you tell me that you can't taste that mustard. So if you can do something that big, that noticeable with something that small, that really rung home with me, because there are so many days where I feel like I have nothing to give, that my faith is hurting because of whatever circumstance I'm in, and I feel that I'm overwhelmed. But when God says that if you have a faith that small, that's all you need, and you can tell a mountain bigger than anything else around us to move, and it moves. And there are so many mountains in our lives, whether it's a new behavior with Xander, whether it's a situation at school where it's a really tough thing and we're trying to get support, or whether it's just a mountain in my own life of emotion that I have, or something's not working in the kitchen too. If we have faith that we can make change in that and move through it, those things will be moved. So that's why that one rings for me.
Wow, I love that. I guess I never thought about the fact that mustard is the smallest seed, but it has huge flavor, huge impact. So I love
Yeah,
that. Thank you for sharing.
of
So,
course.
and also as an adoptive dad, especially of a kiddo with FASD, would you leave us with a couple words of encouragement for our fellow foster and adoptive parents that are listening?
Of course, we can't have too much of that, and that's something that we really appreciate in our own lives too. That we can't see the forest through the trees some days because we're in the thick of it. So an encouraging word is really, really helpful. Um, keep going, keep
Mm.
going, keep pushing. It matters. And I find that something that really carries me through when those moments get really tough, or those days get tough, or in some cases the seasons, weeks, months, years get really tough. You don't take flack unless you're over the target, and that means that if you don't receive fire in a safe zone. You receive that when you're in the war zone, and some days feel like spiritual warfare to us. Some days it feels like the enemy is just pushing for us to fail, pushing for us to give up, trying to isolate us really, really badly, because he does his worst work when we're alone.
Mm.
So don't stop pushing. When you feel that tension, when you feel that pushback, when you feel like, man, something's going to give here, and I hope it's not me, keep going. Always, always, always advocating for your kid, and knowing that it's not just going to be one day. And I know that's kind of scary sometimes too, but you're in this for the long haul. You're in this for the rescue. You're in this for the mission. And it's not just rescuing your kiddo or kiddos. Sometimes it's for your own good, whether I want to admit it or not. It's not just for them too. So keep at it, keep going. And remember, again, like I said, that mustard seed is tiny, and that's all you need. And some days that's all you got, and that is enough.
Yeah, sometimes all you can do is muster up that mustard seed, right?
Amen.
All right. Well, Derek, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, for teaching families to cook on your Red Shoe Chef's YouTube channel, for all that you're doing. We just really appreciate it. I hope to see you. Will you be at CAFO in Atlanta in September?
Yes, it's funny. That's a bookend. That was our first conference so many years ago, was in Atlanta, and we're going back. We're already pre-registered. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, I'll be there too. So I look forward to seeing you there. And thanks so much for being on the show.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for spreading the word about what we're doing here. And thanks for all that you've taught us over the years too. So
thanks so much. Well, I am grateful that you also tuned into the adoption and foster care journey this week. We're here to inspire, educate, and equip you. I hope you were encouraged and inspired by my conversation with Red Shoe Chef Derek Warren. Be sure to check out his YouTube channel. Be sure to go check out Red Shoe Chefs on YouTube, because you're going to love his episodes. They're not extremely long. You learn so much. It's fun. And it's great to know he's a fellow foster and adoptive parent, parenting a kiddo with FASD, he and his wife. So make sure you check that out and get cooking with your kids. It would be great. So be sure to check out our other resources as well. Our Hope for the FASD Journey support community, online support group. I offer FASD parent coaching, and of course our training and our workshops. Everything is at justicefororphans.ny.org. You can go there, click on Adoption and Foster Care Journey, and you will find all of the things. I'm here for you as a mom of 2 young adults now with fetal alcohol syndrome. I spent so many of those early years trying to figure out what was going on and what could we do and how could we fix this. Becoming trauma-informed helped, but it was, we were still lacking some of the important things that we needed. And that's when we recognized we really need to understand this whole fetal alcohol spectrum disorder thing so much better. And that is why we offer all of the training and the support and the resources that we do for you. So don't forget, coming up on February 19th, you can sign up for that workshop. It's 5 weeks in a row for 3 hours each week, wired differently. And I use the Facets neurobehavioral approach. So you can register and learn more on our website, but that is one of the biggest trainings that I do each year. It is online. You won't want to miss it. So check that out. Be sure to subscribe and follow all of our social media channels, as well as subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. We would love it if you do. And again, just so grateful that you spent your valuable time with us today. I'm thrilled to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans, and check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.